A few weeks back, I put my mad scientist hat on and had some experiments with modelling paste, trying to find out how modelling paste reacts with watercolour. It's designed to work with acrylics, but I tested 8 different modelling pastes in different situations to see how it would work with watercolour. So why did I do this? Well, it's because if we want to add a third dimension and look at this painting, this is watercolour on canvas, but if we want to add an extra texture and dimension, we might want to use modelling paste. And here I've applied all sorts of modelling paste using stencils to create the jungle, and then the bird is painted on top. Now, I wanted to find the best modelling paste for this sort of work. Well, I was really heartened by the reaction. I thought it was quite a niche subject, but lots of people were really enthusiastic. And I had 2 main questions. The first was, couldn't we use spackle instead? And I was like, what's spackle? So I put that into my American English dictionary, and spackle is what we call filler. Could we not use polyfiller, wall filler instead? The second question I got was, can't I just make my own? So do not say that I don't listen. I have been down to the DIY shop. I have bought a number of spackles, also known as filler, and tested them out for you. And I think you will find the results really interesting. I've also tried a homemade one. My name's Liz Chatterton. I'm a watercolour artist based in Berkshire, and every week I share a tip, trick or technique that I wish I'd known about ages ago. I love using watercolour in different ways, including in mixed media and bringing a 3D texture into our 2D world. I've had a little trip to my local DIY shop and picked up a couple of different fillers. So this lightweight version, a multi-purpose, and then an acrylic based one. And I thought, well, let's do exactly the same experiment, which was stenciling with it and doing a rough application and seeing how watercolour went over the top. Let's use these, because if these work, wouldn't that be good? The extra thing we're going to have to look for, of course, is what colour they are. Are they white? Are they off-white? Do they crack? Fine, we're not going to fold our paper, but if it's on a canvas, there will be movement. If there's paper, there'll be movement. We don't want it to crack or flake off. And I was interested because this one says it's paintable within 30 minutes. The others have got different drying times, so that'd be worth looking at. Just for completeness, the other question I got on that video was, what about homemade versions? So I looked up a few recipes and I've made a little homemade version. I'll tell you about that. And the final thing was, as I was clearing up from my mammoth testing session, I did come across cold pressed ground from Quor. One question I was asked, could you use watercolour ground as a modelling paste? Well, it's a bit thin. You can get texture with it, but you're not going to get really full-bodied texture with it, whereas cold pressed ground is a lot thicker, so you probably can. And as I happen to have a pot of this, I thought we could test that too. The first thing I noticed when I'd been at the DIY shop was the difference in weight between these 2 fillers. I have to say, I thought I'd picked up a Duff one that hadn't been through the machine properly. Just to prove it, I've got a set of scales here. So if I put that one on, 271 grams, and it is 600 millilitres. This is weighed in kilograms. So yes, it is just over a kilogram. The difference in weight is bizarre, but I did check, this one is full up. So this is far more lightweight. So I'm really excited to try this lightweight one because I think that might be good. I don't want to add a huge amount of weight to a canvas because it'll make it sag. Just as before, I've got little pieces of watercolour paper. I'm going to do a rough textured sort of scrape and a stenciled one with each of these. Leave them to dry overnight and then put watercolour on top to see whether it repels the watercolour, absorbs it, and draw a few conclusions. Let's start with a lightweight filler because that's the one I'm excited about. It is white, which is a good start for watercolour, and it is a bit like marshmallow. Really very smooth texture. Looks a bit like icing, frosting. I think you could happily eat that, but I'm not going to. We'll put a bit on here, scrape it along. I'm interested to see whether that is going to really adhere to the surface or not. I've got the same stencil I used before, and let's just put a little on here and scrape it through. Someone did ask me where I got this stencil from, and I'm dreadfully sorry, I really cannot remember. Right, let's have a look. Well, lovely crisp outline, but we won't be able to tell what it's like until it's dry. Apologies, I should have said that this pot of lightweight filler, so that's 600 millilitres, £4.99, half the price of even the cheapest of the other modelling pastes. The next one I want to test is the multi-purpose filler. So my slight concern, apart from the fact that it's rather cream coloured, is the weight of it. Good thing about this particular project, we live in an old house. There are always bits to be filled in walls, etc. So I will not have wasted my money. None of these work for art. They will at least work in the house. So let's try that stenciling. Just on first impressions, of course, the lightweight version is winning just because of the whiteness. But this version stencils nicely. It appears to go on pretty smooth. Compare those colours. Okay, I am intrigued by this, so I need to put it in my sort of gun. No idea what this is going to be like. It simply says it's a highly flexible acrylic sealant. It can be over painted in approximately an hour depending on temperature and humidity. What I think I'm going to have to do is just squeeze out a little onto this surface. Not very convenient to have it in one of these sort of applicator guns. Okay, positively the colour is looking good. So it's white, it's very smooth, it holds a sharp mark. I just like the sound of this because it said about it being highly flexible. Whether it's absorbent, I don't know. Well, that's a lovely crisp stencil line. So 300 millilitres was £3.50. Did I tell you the price of the multi-purpose? That was 1 kilogram, £4.24. Right, the one I'd like to try now is the homemade version. And I looked up various recipes and I came across one that used bicarbonate of soda, which is baking soda for North Americans. We call it bicarb. There is another one that uses talc, baby powder, talcum powder. I didn't like the look of that, I guess because I was grown up on the scandal of asbestos in talc, so it's something that I just don't use. The basic mixture, I took a tablespoon of bicarb of soda, mixed it with enough of gesso, white gesso, to make it into a paste, and added a tiny squidge, which is the technical term, of white PVA glue, just to give it a little flexibility, and made it into a thick paste. Well, the advantage, of course, is that you can just make as much as you need to at a time, and if you don't like this mixture, you can use the bicarb for baking. Now, I am surprised how gritty this is. I was expecting this to be quite smooth, and it has come out really gritty, so I will be intrigued to see how it applies to the paper. Yeah, that is the grittiest. It's grittier than the spackles, the fillers that I've just tried. Could be a very nice texture if you were doing, oh, I don't know, a mountainous landscape. I'm guessing we will not get very crisp edges, or we will get rougher edges because it is grittier. And it feels gritty as you spread it through. Okay, that's a totally different effect. As I suspected, we're getting rough edges. Let's just say compare that to our painter's mate. Colour-wise, that's good and white. We can make as much or as little as we want. Maybe that's going to be good. Let's now try the cold press ground. Ordinary watercolour ground, I think, is too fluid to really do what we want modelling paste to do for us. But the cold press ground is designed to be put on with a palette knife, whereas ordinary watercolour grounds are just painted on like gesso. So I think this may be quite an interesting ground to work with. And it is absolutely designed for watercolour. So if you look at the paste, it's very white and it's thick. But also let's look at the paste and look at the price. So we have £15.95 for this pot when I looked it up today, 237 millilitres. For example, that tube of Painter's Mate, 310 millilitres. So this is 4 or 5 times as expensive. Now, I have no idea how it'll work. Texture-wise, it's pretty gritty as well, not unlike that bicarb mix. Now the bicarb mix isn't as white. It's interesting when you put them alongside each other. It feels very similar. Of course, how they actually perform is a different matter. For say this makes any surface like a fine cold pressed paper. I have to say, I think it's way rougher than the average cold press. I would put it as rough watercolour ground rather than cold press, but that is my opinion. If you were using it as a watercolour surface, you can put it on with a palette knife. You can sand it down if you need to, you can smooth it down, but you just put one layer on, whereas with ordinary watercolour ground, you put on 3 thin layers. Well, it's given us a really crisp outline, but it's given us the same sort of roughness. Again, let's compare it to that bicarb. Yeah, so a very similar effect. I'll do the final clean up. We'll leave these overnight to really dry and then come back and put watercolour on top and see what goes on. All our little samples are well and truly dry. So what I want to do is simply see how watercolour goes over them. No right or wrong to this, though that's rather nice. This is the no-nonsense lightweight filler that I was rather excited about. See how it blends. And it said you can paint over it, but that's with household emulsion. So that is looking really nice, because in some circumstances, of course, you want a really absorbent texture, and some, well, it might be nice to have it reject the water. Let's put this. But that is very absorbent. So if you want an, oh, and look how it moves. Lovely. Yeah, I'm very excited by this. If you were doing an all-over texture and wanting to paint over it, you would want that absorption. If you were deliberately trying to get a pattern, like we did on a couple of these. Ooh, let's see. Like here. So the texture paste repelled the watercolour and really stood out. That's great, but this is super absorbent. This is the multi-purpose filler, and compared to say this Painter's Mate, you can see it's definitely off-white. So when you bend it, that's not cracking or flaking off. That's good. This is what I should have done with the other one. No, that looks okay. If you remember, this was a really heavy one. but once again, it's taking that wash in a pretty smooth way, albeit when you do the comparison, you can see the difference in the colour. This is bright white, we get brighter colours. This has definitely got a yellowier tinge to it. See how it goes over here. It's going over this stenciling very nicely, and I guess because of course I'm putting yellow over it, we're not getting that sort of slight dulling of the colour. That is a good option as long as you weren't doing a big canvas, and that would be heavyweight. Right, this was the Painter's Mate. It does feel incredibly smooth. Ah, can you see? It's repelling. You can see the difference in those. Oh, well, that answers that. Right, and there's the colour over there. And you can see how the pattern just comes through because the filler is resisting the watercolour. So we get the stencil pattern showing through more. None. Again, just look at the difference. Now let's look at our homemade. Okay, that's very absorbent, very rough. This won't do your brushes much good, will it? But rather a lovely texture. So it's a really nice effect, but very rough, and it is very absorbent. A dry bit here, just bend. Okay, that doesn't seem to be flaking off or cracking. Good. Our final one is that cold pressed ground. Not really a modelling paste, and this jolly well should be absorbent because it is absolutely designed to be a watercolour. Again, very rough on that brush though, potentially. Beautiful texture. What I'm really liking is the sort of really rough raised area against the smooth and softness of the paper underneath. Yeah, liking that a lot. But do I like it more than my homemade? No, probably not. I haven't quite got room on my desk to have all these showing, the 5 showing at once. But there they are, those samples. I'm absolutely delighted with how this lightweight filler has behaved. It's lovely to put on. It's a bright white. It's flexible, it's absorbent, the colours really sing, and it was £4.99 for 600 millilitres. So that is going to definitely stay in my art stash. The other thing that I noticed, because I applied all these yesterday, this dried really quickly. The tub said it can be painted within half an hour. Didn't try it within half an hour, but it was certainly touch dry really, really quickly, a lot more quickly than this multi-purpose filler. So this one wasn't absorbent. So if you want to exploit that lack of absorbency, it gave really lovely sharp marks and was super smooth. And then of those, that homemade versus the core cold press ground, they seem to behave very similarly, and I'm really loving, I say, this rough texture against the smoothness of the background. So I think I will try and exploit that in a mixed media piece at some time in the future. So that's given me some really interesting ideas to work with. My conclusion is that there are alternatives to these very expensive pastes. I would say that the Galleria modelling paste and that no nonsense works in a very similar way. The results are really similar, but one is a third the price of the other. So I think that was a rather useful little exercise. If you're in the UK, head on down to Screfix and get some of that. If you're in a different country, you will have a lightweight spackle or something that you can try. Do a little experiment like this and you may save yourself a lot of money, or you may discover some really interesting textures. This is a little bonus. I'd had so much fun with my experiments that I found a tiny canvas, it's only 13 centimetres, and decided to try and make some art. I used the multi-purpose filler and I had to make a little notch scraper out of a bit of mount board because I didn't have one to hand. I'm not sure I made it terribly well, but this is just playtime. And I thought I would do a rainbow. First thing I learned was it's not quite as easy as it looks when you see people doing it and do these beautiful smooth patterns. But hey, it was good enough. Once it had dried overnight, I painted it. This is obviously double time, just following the colours of the rainbows and making sure that I did the sides as well. It went on really smoothly as we thought it would from our experiments. It absorbed really well, it blended. That's why I thought the rainbow was good, so I could see how all the colours blended together, and it was really good. And the colours were lovely and bright, even though we found that multi-purpose was a little off-white in its colour. I managed to get really vibrant colours and just had so much fun with this painting. There we go, that's the violet going on last. And again, I let it just dry thoroughly. And then I thought, how shall I finish this? And I used some liquid glass, which is a really thick resin type coat.